What does it mean to be a Western yogi? How can someone who was born and raised in the West, who comes from a Judeo-Christian background, practice yoga and meditation in an authentic and genuine way? My name is Christopher Sartain, and this is the Western Yoga Podcast. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Western Yoga Podcast. It is July 1st, 2024. I'm here in the Southern Andes Mountains at our small retreat center in Chile. Enjoying a rainy morning, a rainy winter morning, and contemplating a few things. I wanted to give you all an update on the podcast. I think I read recently about 90% of podcasts never make it to 50 episodes. And so I feel lucky that I was able to produce 50 episodes of the Western Yoga Podcast. But I'm feeling like it might be time to focus on other things. And so I'm not saying that this is absolutely the end of the Western Yoga Podcast, but I'm definitely going to take a prolonged break from it for a while. And I appreciate everyone that has listened to the podcast over the years. I'm very grateful. But I will leave it up on Spotify, all the episodes. But on Podbean and Apple, I have to pay for hosting. And it's about $250 a year. Don't really want to pay that anymore if I don't have to. So probably in the next couple months, I probably won't renew with the hosting for Podbean and Apple. But Spotify is free, so I will leave it up on Spotify. So if y'all typically listen to it on Podbean and Apple, just go ahead and follow the podcast on Spotify instead. In 2019, I had spoken with some friends about the possibility of starting an organization, church, like a church for Christian mystics, because we talked about it, and decided that is sort of missing from the world. And really the only place for Christian mystics is in the Catholic Church, and that's no good for a variety of reasons. I'm not a big fan of the Catholic Church or these huge organizations, and so we thought it might be cool at least to start like a little online church ministry kind of thing for Christian mystics, focusing on really the teachings of the Essenes, the Ebionites, the early Christians, pre-Pauline Christianity, the original teachings of Yeshua and all that, and especially the Gospel of Thomas. And so we talked about it and actually went through some of the paperwork and whatnot to establish an actual 501c3 nonprofit organization, a real church. But because of the pandemic and all of that, the plans fell through at that time. But here we are 5 years later, and I still feel called to establish something like that. And so I've been working on a new YouTube channel and web page. I wrote a book recently about all of these things. And so, I've been moving in that direction. If you listen to the podcast, I'm really into Christian mysticism and Western mysticism. probably these days, or at least in the last few years, even more so than yoga. I love the yoga tradition, and I value, of course, the relationship I had with my spiritual teacher, Roy Eugene Davis, and the lineage of Kriya Yoga masters. They filled in so many important gaps for me and my spirituality and my spiritual path that just don't exist within Christian mysticism, unfortunately. And I will always be a Kriya yogi, a Kriya Bon, and I will continue to do my practice each day and continue to read that literature and maintain my psychic connection with that lineage of masters, of course. But, whereas I used to lean probably 60% yoga, 40% Christian mysticism, these days it's more like 75% Christian mysticism, 25% yoga, something like that. Yoga is wonderful, but I have noticed in the last decade or so that there's a lot of ego in the yoga tradition and all spiritual traditions. I'm not picking on yoga, but it has sort of gotten more and more shallow and superficial, especially with the advent of social media, Instagram, and all of this. And even in the spiritual side of yoga, teachers, there's a lot of arrogance there and a lot of pretentious teachers out there who really think they're something special, and that gets on my nerves. And so they develop these massive spiritual egos based around their following, how many followers they've been able to accrue, or maybe certain experiences they've had, and all these kinds of things. And I've fallen into those traps, of course, myself. So it takes one to know one. But yeah, it's just, it gets on my nerves. And so I find the Christian mystics that I talk to are far more humble and grounded. And the Christian tradition, really, it's a tradition. So I'm not a hardcore traditionalist, but at the same time, it's good to have that foundation, that moral foundation. Because mysticism without a firm tradition, a firm traditional foundation is a bit dangerous. It's a bit dangerous because people start to think, teachers in the yoga tradition sometimes will start to think they're really the center of attention and everything sort of revolves around them rather than the tradition. And there's a lot of that going on. And again, I've been guilty of that in the past myself. So there's no judgment there. This is my observation. And so anyway, yeah, I've been moving more and more, over the last few years in the direction of Christian mysticism and really diving deep into early Christianity, proto-Christianity, Christian vegetarianism, the Essenes, the Ebionites, the Gospel of Thomas, and all of that. And so that's really been the focus of my research, really for the past, 5 years, I'd say. And of course, if you follow this podcast, you know that a lot of the episodes have to do with the Gospel of Thomas and early Christianity and Christian vegetarianism and Christian mysticism and all that. So it's obviously not news to any of you, but at any rate, that's kind of where my heart's at right now. And so I have been focusing more on that and possibly establishing some type of online church ministry for Christian mystics who feel like they don't really have anywhere to go or any community to support them and all that. I will continue my participation in the Kriya Yoga Alliance, which I think is is a cool thing, that I'm doing with some spiritual friends, and so we'll continue our Sunday services every Sunday at 11 a.m. And you can go to KoreaYogaAlliance.com to get the Zoom link for those online Zoom Sunday services. And so, of course, I'll continue my participation in the Korea Yoga Alliance and all that. And, of course, here in Chile, we'll continue offering our yoga teacher trainings and yoga courses, and my Korea Yoga ministry is still strong here. But my English language ministry, yeah, I'm definitely leaning more in the direction of Christian mysticism at this point. And of course, I'm always evolving. My spirituality is always evolving, so these things could change over time. But I'm putting the podcast on hold for a while. I think 50 episodes was more than enough. There's an insane amount of content out there right now, a lot of competition, of course. And I don't know that I really have a whole lot of to offer as far as something different or unique that's not already out there. And podcasting does require a lot of time and energy and effort, believe it or not. And I would just like to focus on other things right now, other projects. And so that's what I've been doing. But I have published 3 books in the past year. So it's been a very productive year in that regard. Sartane Method Breathwork is a book of my breathwork method that I've developed over the years as part of the 300-hour yoga therapy training that we offer here in Chile. And in that book, you learn how to create personalized sequences of pranayama, therapeutic pranayamas, breathwork, in other words, based upon a series of tests that you take in the book, a dosha test, a guna test, a pranavayu test, to determine where there might be some imbalances that you can improve. And so you learn how to create a personalized pranayama sequence for yourself in that book. And I did publish an autobiography called Mountain Yogi. That's also available in Spanish now. And all these books are on Amazon and Kindle. And my most recent book is called Yeshua, the Anointed One, Pre-Pauline Christianity. Just published that one. It's 180 pages, and one of the longest books I've ever published. My books are usually under 100 pages, but I went a little crazy with this one, and it includes the Gospel of Thomas, Q, the so-called Q source, the Epistle of James, and the Didache, which are all first century pre-Pauline Christian texts that preserve, in my opinion, the original Christian tradition and teachings of Jesus or Yeshua. And I give my full commentary on the Gospel of Thomas. I sort of interpret each verse of that sacred text, my favorite text, as you all know, from any tradition. And so, if you want to support me, please buy a book, paperback, ideally, but they're also available on Kindle for folks that prefer to use Kindle. So I don't want to say that I'm signing off for good here. I'll probably post a few episodes here and there, but again, I don't think I'll continue on with Podbean or Apple. Probably in the future, all episodes will be posted to Spotify only. So thank you so much for listening over the years, for supporting this podcast, and I will take an extended break from the podcast. I might post a few more episodes here in the future. So anyway, thank you so much. Lots of love. Namaste.